Delhi Summit 2023. This session's focus, Applications of AI in Priority Sectors, marks a significant milestone in our exploration of AI's transformative role in our world. AI's emergence marks a significant turning point in the evolution of technology in our lives. It represents a major shift, redefining how key sectors crucial for global economic growth and societal health operate, innovate, and interact with the society. This change goes beyond mere improvement. It's a complete overhaul in addressing the challenges and opportunities in areas like healthcare, education, finance, and security. In today's session, we will explore the widespread impact of AI in these priority economic sectors. Our goal is to develop a detailed understanding of the far-reaching consequences of AI and how it can be leveraged seamlessly into these areas. Bringing together leaders, decision makers, and industry experts, we aim to uncover the limitless possibilities of AI and discuss how to responsibly leverage it for enhancing economic growth and societal welfare. I would now like to call upon our esteemed panelists onto the dais. Ms. Nivruti Rai, CEO and MD, Invest India. Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma, CEO, Paytm. Ms. Leila Cremona, founder and CEO, Medibay. Mr. Sameer Shah, Executive and Vice Chair, Dwara Holdings. Mr. Narayanan Vaidyanathan, Head, Policy Development, Association of Chartered Certificate Accountants. Mr. Akrit Vaish, CEO, Haptic AI. Dr. Shailesh Kumar, Chief Data Scientist, Center for Excellence in AI and ML, Geo Institute. Mr. Raghu Dharmaraju, CEO, Art Park at IISc. Mr. David Weller, Senior Director, Emerging Technologies, Competitiveness and Sustainable Policy at Google. Mr. Kazim Rizvi, Founder, The Dialogue. Before we begin our in-depth discussion, I invite our esteemed keynote speakers and panelists to join us at the front for a group photograph. Welcome, Mr. David Weller. I request the panelists to please stand up for a group photograph. Please come forward. I'm thrilled to introduce our first keynote speaker, Ms. Nivruti Rai, who is the MD and CEO of Invest India. She joins Invest India after illustrious 29 years at Intel as a global business and technology leader. She is also the recipient of Nari Shakti Puruskar for her remarkable contributions in the field of technology. Let's give her a warm round of applause as she leads us into this enlightening session.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Let me introduce myself. You heard I am leading Invest India, but prior to Invest India, I was a technologist for 30 years of my life. The only one company I worked for is Intel. I have an Intel colleague in Vijay. I have worked on AI. I have worked on building AI inference engine. So from transistors to IP to AI accelerator, I have worked on it all. And I'm also a very sincere patriotic citizen for India, which means my heart is invested in looking at how AI as a technology can be leveraged in a democratic manner, be responsible, be ethical. There's privacy with control. There is security with reliability. And most importantly, it is accessible and it is democratic. So it is very important. If it is democratic, if it is for population scale, we have to have the best minds working on it. And India is custodian to 18% of the world population. So it is going to play a big role. Having said that, India is synonymous to its people, 1.4 billion people. Each person is a data factory. I also must say India is synonymous to software. Now we have been building software for ourselves, whether we look at Paytm or whether we look at our own biometric identity with Aadhaar, enabling Jam Trinity with mobile phone, and enabling amazing opportunities in a democratic manner. So that's a very long introduction. But having said that, we have to look at what are the major sectors that AI can influence. And if I may get my clicker so I can use my slides. Okay. It is? Thank you. So it is extremely important to look at what are those areas that AI should help in democratizing. Health is one. I have been part of 2 boards, one in a hospital, 2 in discovery of biosimilars and creating generics like insulin, making insulin from $10 to 5 cents. That was a goal of this company. So I decided to go for health as a sector to talk about AI. Now, before I talk about health, let me explain to you our human body. At a very high level, I don't mean to be a doctor, but to understand human body such that we can leverage AI and technology is absolutely essential. To just tell you that paracetamol for every pain is not the solution. So the basic building blocks of human bodies are the amino acids. There it is. We have 20 amino acids only that our body needs, out of which 9 of them are essential, and many of those, the 9 of them, we basically get through nutrition. So 20 amino acids, which are made of NH3, hydrocarbons, HCO, a very simple molecule that is made out of these building blocks. Many of these amino acids combine in a 3D structure to form proteins. And proteins, you think of anything, your body is made of proteins, your cells. So I will talk a little bit more about now how many proteins that our human body has. 100,000 plus. Okay? So 1.4 billion people built of 20 amino acids and 100,000 plus proteins, and going on increasing. Now those proteins combine to form cells. Cells has nucleus, cells have mitochondria, you've heard of all of that. There are 37 trillion plus cells in a human body. 37 trillion. Divide by 10, that's our GDP. 4 unique tissues get made out of these trillion cells. There are like skeletal tissues, epithelial tissues. There are 4 unique tissues that get made out of these trillion cells. And many of those tissues, at least 2 plus, combine to form organs. Heart, liver, and 79-ish organs combine to make a human body. The reason I told you is AI is synonymous to data, and AI is synonymous to software. So therefore, it is important to show you in one human being, this is the complication of data and interactions that we are looking at. So now you know what our bodies are made of, simply molecules. And 37 trillion cells have how many molecules? Let's go to the next. Now, I already told you Our body is made of the basic building blocks, amino acids. Some examples, glycine and alanine. Many of these enes are amino acids. What I want to tell you is these proteins that are there in our human body actually split, divide, or fold. Amino acids are like a string, like a necklace. When they fold, they become proteins. So when the protein folding happens in an incorrect way, diseases happen. And by the way, just to let you know, human beings have 3.4 billion pairs of genome in the nucleus genome, and about 16,000 in the mitochondrial genome. They're all inside our cells. And each one of them has so many proteins that are folding. Mitochondrial protein folds 100 times faster. So most of the disease happens when the mitochondrial protein folds incorrectly. And one of them is cystic fibrosis that happens to us. What are some of the solutions doctors are using? Gene therapy, which basically watches out for genetic mutations. Like I said, the folding and the mutation. And then we look at the kind of study we do is amino acid metabolism and interaction study. And that's why the number is important, 1.4 billion people. And then you think of the world is 7, 8 billion people. Proteins, everything is a protein. Whether it's an oxygen transmitter, hemoglobin, or a sugar monitor in our blood, insulin, everything is a protein, 100,000 plus. A disease where the folding of protein happens and a lot of deposition happens is Huntington disease. It has got to do with brain. What do? Leverage simple things like antioxidants, which basically help in reducing the free radicals which are causing our proteins to fold incorrectly. What is the study we do? By the way, anything which has omics in it, know that it deals with a large amount of data. Millions, billions, trillions. So for this kind of disease, we look at proteomics. So proteinomics. And it looks at composition of protein and what is the function of this protein. A cell has a function. Every single protein has a function. So 100,000 plus proteins. What is the function? If you look at cells, skin is a cell, liver is a cell, each has a function. When the cell starts dividing in an uncontrollable, unstoppable manner, cancer happens. So what do? We have treatments like chemotherapy, radiation therapy. What do? They kill those cells. But they kill cells which are cancer cells, but they also kill good cells. What do we do in terms of study? We do cellular biology research, focusing on the pathway this cell is making. You know how cancer cells survive? They create a way of transmitting blood from there and drawing from some place. So they create that road. And that's how, cancer cells survive. So we do cellular biology. Look at, tissues. I already told there are 4 unique tissues. If the tissue starts depositing one place, fibrosis happens. You have antifibrotic drugs. You remove the excessive tissue. But the study that you do is histology and immunology. Why is this tissue depositing in an uncontrollable manner? Then I already told about 79 organs that make our cells. Very, very critical, building blocks, your heart, your brain. When a heart fail happens, what happens is the muscle wall of your heart weakens. Muscle is a tissue. Tissue is made of proteins, which is made of amino acids. So what do we do as doctors? Do an organ transplant. We put pacemakers and things like that. So We leverage technology in doing many of these things. Now, what is the purpose of showing all of this? Purpose is we don't need one single medicine that is given to everybody, because each one of us has these 37 trillion cells which are unique. Even though 99.6% of our genome is common, the 0.4% which is different creates the need for us having personalized medicine. So quickly coming to what is the role that AI plays. By the way, many of you may have heard of AlphaFold. I don't know which version AlphaFold is now, 1, 2, 3, I don't know. It started in 2018. I think 2022, AlphaFold has it, maybe version 2 or 3. What AlphaFold does is, you know that a molecule is treated on a diseased cell. How are they treated? This molecule goes and binds. So you may have heard protein ligand. Ligand is an outside protein that goes and sticks to our diseased protein, and that's how you figure out how to address this problem, how to address this disease. So data analysis is absolutely essential. AI can look at a scan, a breast cancer scan, and know exactly where the cancer cell exists, because we have the ability from India to train our AI model for breast cancer detection, that it can come up with higher accuracy and higher efficiency in detecting. Human eye may miss something. What my worry is the false negative. There was a cancer, but it was told it's not a cancer. So AI-based analysis can drive a lot of diagnostics and truly democratize such kind of identification. Protein biomarker discovery. Look at, protein is a string, amino acids are strings. It folds and becomes a three-dimensional, we all need those three-dimensional cells. There are many ways where AI can actually create those proteins and leverage those proteins to see in a lab whether it is binding and whether it is removing the disease. Protein identification and quantification. I already told you about one example. There are millions of examples. I heard of a company which has it's called Neura, and it basically does genome sequencing. And just to let you know why I'm so excited about my background with AI and technology and now in healthcare, because I'll tell you, in the year 2000, to do genome sequencing of one person, we had to spend $50 million. 1 teraflop operations, $50 million. Now, 1 teraflop operation can be done in less than $100, and you can hold it in your hand, in your phone. Previously, 1,600 square feet, 800 kilowatt power, now you're holding it. That's the power of technology, and this is the need that we have. Or obviously, automation of routine and repetitive tasks. I want to end with AI will be able to democratize healthcare with efficiency, accuracy, and scalability. I do not want our world to have somebody die of a disease which could have been solved. So thank you very much. Looking forward to all your support.
Thank you, ma'am, for your thought-provoking remarks and insightful address. I would now like to invite Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma, the CEO of Paytm, to the stage for our second keynote address. Mr. Sharma's pioneering work and visionary leadership in the financial technology sector makes him an invaluable voice in our discussion on AI's transformative potential. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma.
Thank you. First of all, I must congratulate the hosts here. When the world is getting ready for AI, we have an AI summit. So congratulations to everybody who's made us possible. So cheers to every host in the room, Kaylee's. I'll talk about it as my understanding of AI, and I fundamentally believe that we as India, and I probably will stand on behalf of India here, not just of my company, we as India should have been having a lot more attention to AI than we've had till today. And it is more up to the entrepreneurs, I'd rather say, and it is led by, like I said, one point of time, that we all were busy finding whether blockchain has use case or not, public trust was there or not. And today when we have discovered that it has a material use case, but it is not a transformative like we would have imagined it to be, but AI definitely is. And a misunderstanding of many of us will be that the world before AI and after AI will be in two different segments, just like if you had internet and you do not have internet. And post-internet, everything has sort of changed, and then internet came on the handheld, so it just changed the world. But AI as a need for all of us Indians in everyday life will be even more important, because we lack the number of resources available and capable resources available for any service as citizen that we need. For example, like you can start as basic as education, health, and you can talk about financial services, obviously, and each of these have phenomenal example here. And if I was to talk about education, which is because we are out there with the best demography available to us as an education, possibly making them as a talent available to the productive use case. The example here would be that a lot of teachers whom there is a language barrier, because we are a more than 25 language country, and English is not our first language by definition. So you have a lot of students who are very bright and capable, but they are missing the access to the language syllabus which is made for them to study, and then they are missing the access to the tools and toys that can make them globally relevant. Obviously, the power of internet and power of globally accessible videos have sorted out lots of access to the content, but an interactive teacher whom they can talk to is still missing. And in my opinion, the AI bots, and especially the local language AI bots, which will be built obligatorily in India, will be one of the phenomenal leapfrog that we will have in the education. And you can imagine very simply that in a teacher, whatever they are teaching in a classroom, either they are assisted or the students, they themselves are assisted by their language speaking and the syllabus and the capability which is phenomenal at a world scale. And this will continue not just in early education, this can go into the graduate and masters and post even PhD, etc. education. It will be phenomenally different world that we will live into. In fact, I do agree with Nirupati's point of view on health at a very big scale, again, because of basic healthcare in India, more or less we are significantly deprived number of hospital, number of doctors, number of beds per 100,000 per 1,000 citizen, if you were to look at it. And there comes again the power of compounding of knowledge that will be consulted and aggregated. So whether it is a remote consultation, whether it is the data that you can capture remotely and then you want to bring it back on the system so that there is an opinion, it is incredible. And I bring in attention to many entrepreneurs and investors in this room that it is up to us to solve for these problems. We can't, unlike in let's say a social network or an internet search engine, where a Western solution can help because it is eventually based on same fundamental, here there is an obligation of expertise of India, or a model that is trained on India or India's data points, whether they are citizen data points or historical data points. So it is even more compoundingly important on us all that we take care of building, whether they are LLM models, whether they are models that are trained on an open source LLM, but it is an important imperative that we do not become a country that is missing the AI wave at a scale that we are seeing it. In fact, I see that many countries could look at it as a productivity enhancer. I look at it as a basic necessity of serving our citizen at a scale. I mean, you saw the advantage of mobile phone that brought in the world and the amount of phenomenal financial inclusion. We talked about Gem Trinity, we talk about payments every day. And this is possible because consumer was ready to commit for a smartphone on their device. And once the customers were ready with a smartphone, the system existed, and then what global example we've been able to do it. And this is exactly the I call upon on us all Indians, that if everybody is committed to generate data, everybody and many governments bodies are generating tons of data, how about modeling it and giving the most intelligent assistant and trainer or a coach or a doctor or an advisor that can do it at a very phenomenal low scale. Remember, India is a frugal and still at a very dramatic scale executed well country. And this combination will probably be the lethal served using the AI. Another one of the very important public service or obligation for I'd say the priority sectors for government is farming. And in India, the farmers are the least data integrated. It mostly works on colloquial knowledge. We've seen the problems of farming, whether it is a high yield farming we start from, or to the turnaround in a the pollution generating fine paddy burning event that happened at the year end of typical in this country on the north side, because there is a high yield expectation on a turning around. AI will bring the nuances of the land, the ecology, and the kind of produce that you can build, and the demand supply gaps that we are able to fulfill. Right now, we are not able to build our farming supply chain on a specific of a region. Instead, we are trying to find out that what a common most denominator crop that we can produce, and that is what creating a little bit of concern on ecology also in the northern of India. So I not only expect AI to help our farmers to give a better yield, I also help them. AI will solve for one of the biggest gap in ecology, thanks to the farming that we have seen in India, is related to the air quality improvements out there. And finally, we all are, I would say, city dwellers in this room, and we've all seen that there is automation and signals, etc., that we know. But smart cities, which is our Honorable Prime Minister's one of the big dream and big impetus towards growth in urban area, a smart city project, will be able to do phenomenally well if we are able to swing even as basic as traffic lights based on the data that we have on the road. So many a times, as you know, that some traffic lights are shorter, some traffic lights are lengthier, some traffic light needs a one side more traffic, another traffic light needs this, and this all can be grid, which is powered by, again, the technology that is phenomenally done there. I normally try telling that people should treat AI as a spell check. If you were to write a letter and you did not do a spell check, you will feel, well, you can be very capable, your architecture of system can be very able, your serving can be very capable, but it is rather better to do a spell check so that you can discover if there is a missing error in grammar or a spelling out there. AI will actually act like the same for all of us in our life, and especially for government's priority sectors. If we built an incredible plan, that incredible plan needs to be reviewed using the world's compounding knowledge and capability so that it is actually serving what it is supposed to. It will also be worth tracking. I mean, I go back to education again. You know that there are tests people give, but the insights on what should the student do, what should the different amount of knowledge and kind of courses they should go into, all this is a more or less a hearsay, and this would become n equal to 1 level. I am phenomenally excited, and I am phenomenally happy that our government is taking an immediate early step. Remember, LLM, whether an open source LLM made for India or made by India, and the training of the data models, training based on the models in India, will be a very key differentiator for us to have common citizen services served by government by the power of AI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your informative and inspiring address. I would now like to invite Mrs. Kavita Bhatia, ma'am, Scientist G and Group Coordinator, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India, to kindly felicitate our keynote speakers, Ms. Nivruti Rai and Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma. And now, To guide us through what promises to be a stimulating and insightful session, I am pleased to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Kazim Rizvi. As our moderator, Mr. Rizvi's expertise and skill in steering discussions will undoubtedly enrich our understanding and exploration of the topics at hand. Mr. Rizvi, please take over.
I hope I'm audible. Great. Thank you, Ananta, for the kind introduction. And I think we have around 1.5 hours of panel discussion. So I hope all of you guys can see me sitting over there. Maybe I'll just move my chair a little bit so that all of you can face me and we can all have a good discussion. So I think just previously what the keynote speakers mentioned with respect to the role of AI in healthcare and education, and I think Mr. Sharma spoke about large language models and how large language models can help in translation. It can help in making sure that, people who may not be well versed with English are able to understand and are able to sort of get their way together. So I think it's great to see how artificial intelligence can really drive growth, prosperity. The focus for this panel is around priority sectors. So we all understand that the priority sectors are around education, around healthcare, around finance. And I think largely when we look at artificial intelligence, we've been talking about basically 3 to 4 things. A, how does it help in improving access to education, access to healthcare, access to quality services to the people, right? That's one of the key challenges we as a country are looking at, which is one of our key policy priorities, is to sort of connect the last mile and the unconnected, and connect them and make sure that we achieve last mile delivery, right? So that's one of the key objectives. Another is to look at how we can ensure effectiveness with respect to redressal, with respect to making sure that people are able to access these services. Using integration of AI, how do we achieve better livelihoods? How do we ensure we reach optimization of efficiency and optimal use of resources? So I just sort of wanted to give a very broad overview of what we want to sort of focus for this session. I would like to sort of start with Leila Cremona. Leila, thank you so much for coming over. And I think you just sort of arrived yesterday, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So welcome to the beautiful city of New Delhi. And it's a pleasure to talk to you on a beautiful wintry morning. And Delhi is beautiful in the winters, especially in December and January. And Leila, I just want to sort of start with you. And what we'll do also is, to all the panelists, we'll have initial remarks of 3 to 5 minutes. Those who have presentations can sort of take us through those presentations, but we'll have 2 to 3 rounds, and of course we'll open to the audience as well later on. But initial rounds will be with the panelists, 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll come in with your intervention, then we'll have a Q&A as well. So Leila, I just want to start with you with respect to the role of AI in education sector. How can it help in assisting human resources, right? How can it help in assisting teachers to perform their duties better? And also just looking at better learning experiences, how do we get there? And I have a question for you in healthcare as well, with respect to the availability of quality healthcare. So would love to get your remarks on that. Over to you, Leila.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So let's start with education. Part of the problem with education is that there's not enough people with access to it. And what we need to look at is how AI can make education available to everybody. And we're looking here at the different types of immersive education. And when we're talking about education, we're talking about education in business, we're talking about young people, we're talking about adults too. So we were talking earlier about farmers, and it was interesting to hear that, they're very educated at looking after their money, but they need help perhaps with things like simple things like smartphones, etc. So we use AI to not only help with the HR element, to train people, but we can use it for the betterment of everybody, irrespective of their status. When we're talking about AI in education, we can talk with regard to health or business or simply educating at schools. But we've been, since COVID, a lot has happened with educating people online. But the fact is that if we can use AI in immersive education, we're able to reach people that have never been able to access education previously, and to be able to educate them in a more cost-effective and accurate way. So, for example, my company produce and create immersive technology for healthcare. We teach doctors and nurses, and in fact anyone who wants to learn about medical machines, we're able to put them literally into a situation virtually through their spectacles or maybe through a group computer that will allow them to make mistakes. They can use a machine, they can talk, they can interact with real situations, which of course is far better than sitting in a classroom or sitting online alone. So students are literally, no matter what their age, immersed in technology, AI technology that enables them to learn. So the retention value of that learning is in the region, certainly with UK national statistics, of around 75% retention. Now, not only does that mean that students become highly educated, it's faster, it's more cost effective, and the person who wants to educate them can teach those people in the most appropriate way. That comes back to something else. AI is a tool. Lots of people are frightened about what AI is going to do. Is it going to take our jobs? Is it going to overtake the world? Are we going to suffer financially? Are people going to becoming poorer? It is a tool. AI is a tool. And I'm one of the proponents of a very strict AI policy. AI is a child. When you first get hold of it, it's like teaching a child. And as with our children, we try and teach them the good things, not the bad things. And it's up to us to regulate what is taught to AI in the same way as we would regulate what we're teaching a child or young people. If we teach good things to AI, then we haven't got to worry about it. If we teach bad things, then it's a bit of a problem. Moving on to healthcare, there are innumerous advantages in healthcare. And not only just from treatments that are available, from assessing the data that's collected, etc. It's not just data. And we have to be careful that it's not just data that we're collecting. We have to have a relationship between AI and patients. Otherwise, there's no point and it's not going to work. Now, a lot of people, again, are terrified. We use AI technology, robotics, machine automation in our facilities. And this produces accurate results very, very quickly. It helps people because, you know, you're ill, you want something doing fast. You want to be educated about what you are suffering from. You want to know the detail. And using the AI, as the mom said earlier, she went through a whole list of advantages, so I'm not going to repeat them. But it's possible to get the assessments and the tests, and we're working with an Indian company at the moment in providing them with the AI, the machine automation, the robotics that they need to create a machine she's called Tamara, and she takes tests, she analyzes them within 5 minutes to an hour, depending on the test, and there's hundreds of them, and produces the results in situ. That is a huge development. If you have cancer or you have signs of cancer, you want to know very quickly. You don't want to have to wait. And when you're looking at new technology now, look at the new DNA tests that can actually identify through AI whether and actually whereabouts in your body you may be suffering from a cancer. So AI is fundamental in looking at and investigating medical problems. The machines themselves also have to rely on AI. So, for example, if you've ever been for an MRI in a hospital, you know how horrific that is, you know it's radiation, etc. It's a big issue, and then you've got to wait maybe a week, possibly 2 weeks for the result because there are thousands of images produced. Now, what can be done now using AI is that rather than a machine taking flat images, which takes a long time, so your MRI could take up to an hour, there is now technology, medical technology, that takes those images in a circular fashion, uses the AI, can assess against medical data what signs of problems there are, and then reports a limited number back to the radiographer. So we're still working with humans and machines, and this is how the future is.
Thanks. We'll come back to you for the second session, but I think a few important points you made. One is around the fact that it helps in simulation. I think that's brilliant because you can simulate near to perfect real-world experiences through AI, and you can sort of experiment and you can sort of go through certain ideas and test those ideas. I love the fact that you spoke about AI being a child. You know, the fact that you have to train a child, and usually children are susceptible to catching on to anything, right? I mean, you have to train them, nurture them, and I think that's something and that's a great analogy you gave. And also the fact that you spoke about accuracy, which helps in sort of getting a high level of accuracy, but even effectiveness. And I think the point of early detection is so important, because I think when we look at healthcare right now, we are seeing that if you're able to detect cancer at a very early stage, or even other diseases, your diagnosis can be a lot more targeted. So great points over there. I want to come to Akrit. Akrit, thanks a lot for being here with us. And just sort of segueing away a little bit from the use cases of AI in general to sort of looking at generative AI technology, right? And I mean, you've been looking at conversational platforms, and you've built this platform, which is, of course, Haptic AI. So just a couple of points on this, Akrit. Number one is, you know, how significant is, or do you feel, generative AI technology for healthcare, education, finance, right? In terms of effectiveness in delivery, in terms of access, accuracy, etc. And what is that layer of tech stack, that technology, that baseline foundation of technology, which has to be developed to arrive at these technologies? So over to you.
Sure. Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me, and great to be here with all my co-panelists. I think We heard some amazing opening notes. I heard somebody say AI spell check, somebody say AI child. I think the best analogy I've heard is AI is today an intern. It's your intern that gets you done things that otherwise you don't want to do. But as much as it's funny, and I'm joking slightly, I think, the challenge for all of us is we are all sitting over here and in this large scale event exhibition and talking about, amazing things. So we should not be happy with the fact that today AI is only an intern. If we're talking about building technology that's going to be game changing, or like Vijay said, is going to be the next layer of internet, it has to do a lot more. And that's where it leads to your question, where it starts with those sectors. It starts with healthcare, education, financial services. I think it's actually a bigger, significant paradigm shift than maybe even the internet when it comes to those sectors. I think they all pointed out, right? The challenge in those parts of the economy has been accessibility and has been ease of use and functionality. AI democratizes all of that. Especially, one of the areas that we've been working on for the last decade is this local language conversational AI. Everybody knows English-based chatbots have been working and existed for a while, but most of us have not been able to crack local languages, and particularly as you get to what we call low-resource languages, right? There is so many languages unique to our country. Building LLMs for those, where will the data set come from? One of the most amazing things when we try to build, in the earlier world, LLMs were basically NLP models, right? So when we try to build NLP models in, let's say, the 13th or the 14th most popular Indian language, where do we even get the data set from? That's a starting point. I think everybody is broadly aware by now, but for example, the biggest source of, let's say, GPT's large language model is actually Wikipedia data, because they train it a great degree on that. Do we have Wikipedia in, let's say, Gujarati or, Marathi? Marathi probably actually yes, but, I'm going to maybe even, the 20th, 21st popular language. So I think the paradigm shift is huge. I think we all know that. That's why we are here. But the distance that we have to travel is also a fair bit. Right. From using the raw technology, converting it into applications and use cases. My slight, I would say, concern almost would be that I think there is a lot of conversation happening, but not action fast enough. Right. And I'm myself honestly included as part of that, right? In fact, I was telling somebody else outside that, I think it's time we need more AI products and less AI conferences. Because there's, it's important, the dialogue is important, I'm not saying that, but I think that, it's time that we really start seeing something out there. Loud and clear that, look, we don't want to rush into it. Loud and clear that responsibility, ethics, all of that is important. Safety. But I definitely think we can do tests a lot faster than what we are today.
And I would come to you on the building applications part, because you spoke about data sets. Where will the data sets come from? I think this is a big project for India when it comes to translation, when it comes to large language models in all our languages, right? And that's unique to India. And I think, people like you and others who are involved, have a great role to play when it comes to building these large language models, especially for languages where you may not have that amount of data set available. So how do you build that up so that you can have chatbots in different languages? You can help people who do not understand English to sort of converse. I think that's going to be remarkable, because their ability to read, write will be significantly transformed, and their ability to access services will also be significantly transformed. So we'll come to that point. I want to move to Dr. Sameer Shah. And Sameer, thank you so much for joining us. One of the things which we're trying to do over here is priority sectors. So we cannot not talk about finance and agri, and that's something which we want to focus with you, Sameer, is of course looking at the role of Indian farmers. And I think we heard previously that, when it comes to farming, there is a big role AI has to play. And even in general, detecting, understanding weather patterns, the soil, crop, etc. What is the role of AI? So just a couple of points, couple of questions for you. Is number one, generally, how do you think farmers can harness the potential of AI, right? Where are we with respect to the use of technology of AI by the farmers in India's farming community, number one? And in general, how do we also get AI-based solutions to better target priority sector lending? So over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Kazan, thank you very much, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. Just a quick check. I'm not a doctor. So very important question. I think the application of AI for financial inclusion, I will go even deeper from financial services. I'll go to financial inclusion, which is really last mile to the most underserved sections of society. And I do think that this is tremendously game-changing, and I think it has gone well beyond the intern stage of development and application. And some of these applications are already live on the field, making impact, delivering services, not yet at scale. That's really the next thing to do, but absolutely delivering commercially viable, meaningful, relevant, personalized services to the underserved. So I think AI definitely has gone beyond the stage of intern. We definitely now need to think of scale. Scale will require costs to come down, responsibility and policy measures to sort of get wrapped around it. But I do think it's possible. And I'm going to talk, because I represent a lot of application, less tech, more application and policy, and hence I'll sort of love to talk about application. So I'll just to talk a little bit about farming, right? So I'll take the example of a smallholder dairy farmer. Has probably 2 to 3 cows in the backyard, and almost every second rural household in India will have a minimum of 2 or 3 cows in their backyard. They serve as delivering milk for the household, and surpluses are sold out in the market, and so on and so forth. I mean, we all know the role of sort of cattle in a rural household is phenomenal. It's almost like an ATM for the household in many. It's not just anytime milk, but it's also anytime money for the household. It's a real enterprise for that household. Having said that, there are 400 million cattle in the country today. Less than 4% of these cattle are insured. And the reason why is because the traditional insurance system for cattle insurance is a very broken insurance system. It uses an injectable RFID, which is a tag that you either staple onto the ear of the cow or you insert it somewhere in the body of the animal. And that is prone to operational challenges and manipulation. So less than 4% of cattle in India are insured. Because less than 4% of cattle in India are insured, credit is not entering that household, because lenders, financial services providers, don't want to take all the risk. If insurance hasn't come in, they feel that they will end up taking most of the risk, and hence lending has not come in, and hence farmers, cattle farmers, have traditionally been deprived of formal financial services. This is where AI comes in, and I'll just give you a few examples of that. The nose of a cow is called the muzzle. It is as unique as the fingerprint of a human being. It leaves a unique biometric footprint of that animal. There have been applications, and we have converted the nose of the cow into an Aadhaar equivalent for the animal. So it is a unique identity solution for the animal that gets rid of the need for a tag, for an RFID tag, which means that in a non-intrusive, bulletproof manner, insurance can now flow through. And I'll give you a real example of how insurance. So this is, we talked about generating certificates, health certificates and stuff like that. This health certificate is generated by a AI tool within seconds after taking a picture of the animal. It's, it's fully automated, no bias, no judgment, just a direct science reflection within seconds, generates a health certificate, which allows the insurance company to actually generate an insurance policy within seconds. no need for anyone to visit the farmer. You take a picture, upload it onto the cloud. Within seconds, a fitness certificate is generated and a policy is issued down to the farmer, sent on WhatsApp. So these are some of the applications. A real exciting application which I particularly found very interesting is it's not on the slide deck, but I'll just talk you through that. Is just in the context of insurance. So a farmer, and this is a real example, farmer submitted a insurance claim to an insurance company for his cattle. The insurance company realized that the number on the tag had been previously submitted by another farmer for another animal, right? So the insurance company rejected that claim because that was a tag that was compromised. We, for the same farmer, digitized all the animals using this AI-generated muzzle-based identity, and then the insurance company started honoring those claims because they created a trusted ecosystem that could go beyond a compromised RFID tag and start to dispense and honor claims on insurance. So these are things that are happening in India. It does need a lot of policy support. Regulations are always 2 steps behind for good reason, because they have to take things more cautiously. But we do need a much more collaborative approach between technology practitioners and policy making. Another example which I'll show you is a real example which is in the form of credit. Right, so the previous example I gave you was for loans. Now this is a farmer using remote sensing and AI, because farmers in India are 70% of the farmers that we work with, and that's true for most farmers, are new to credit, which means that they don't have a formal financial relationship. Only 30% have a formal financial relationship, which means that they don't have a credit bureau record for them to go to a bank or an NBFC to take loans. And because of that, they continue to be in a vicious cycle of, from one money lender to another money lender, because everyone requires a bureau presence. So how can we use assets that the farmer has, in this case, the farm, digitize the farm and create a alternate underwriting score using the productivity of the farmer basis, looking at the farm. So there have been applications that we have created which have created underwriting score using remote sensing and AI to underwrite farmer, even if they don't have a formal credit bureau score record. And farmers are now beginning to receive loans basis that. So all you have to do is to take a picture, digitize the farm, upload it in the cloud, geotag it, use remote sensing data, create the score, dispense the loan. And we have found that this score is far better than the traditional bank lending that has happened to farmers, which have created almost 10 to 15% of delinquencies. This has resulted in less than 2% delinquencies to farmers. So this is real, viable, commercially viable business for priority sector lending, not just as a social service or as a economic good for the country, but as a viable business model, which is what I think AI needs to deliver at scale. So these are just some of the examples which are real, and my the challenge that I'd like the summit to also focus on, in addition to other outcomes, is to really, how do we blend in practice, academics and policy to bring down, the cost of doing business. For example, today, if you host open source LLMs onto the cloud, the cost is enormous. If, however, you go to the traditional cloud providers and use their LLMs, they are super expensive. I mean, if you want to run messages and if you want to query, those services are not viable in the country. So I would love the conversation to move forward on better collaboration. Thanks.
Thank you, Samir. I think phenomenal use case of just looking at existing assets of farmers and digitizing them and then providing and getting them access to credit. And I think this is exactly what we've been also trying to talk about, right? Is how AI is just bringing together the existing aspects of different sectors and enabling growth and enabling one level or two layer of growth, of effective delivery. I think in this case, when we sort of just speaking about farmers, already it exists. I mean, you have the cattle, you have the farms. What can technology do to just bring it all together and provide them, credit, which they didn't have previously access to? I think to your point of, multi-stakeholder collaboration and sort of bringing policymakers together and technologists together, I think one of the focus for this conference also is to look at how we can make sure that we democratize the use of AI, we reduce the entry barriers, we make it more cost effective as well. So definitely that will be the focus of the discussion. But I want to go to now Narayan Vaidyanathan. Narayan, thank you so much for listening in. And we would like to come to you. We will look at the policy ethical discussion in the second round. So initially what I want you to focus a little bit on is just sort of take us through your sector, which is accountancy and finance, right? And what's the role of AI in accountancy, finance, how it's improving growth and how it's sort of just helping more effective approaches. So over to you.
Thank you, Kazim. You guys can hear me, right? So first of all, thank you to all of the other speakers so far, because I think I've learned a huge amount just listening to everybody else. I think the first thing to say is the sector that I represent is at the intersection of accountancy and finance and education. I work for a body called the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. So we train accountancy and finance professionals. We've got about 250,000 members around the world, from newly qualified accountancy and finance professionals all the way to CFOs and FDs. And we've got about 500,000 students in training globally around the world. So we operate in about 180 countries around the world, including India. I think the thing to say most of all is that we operate within this idea of trying to promote global standards. I think the AI conversation does require a degree of interoperability, or will benefit from it if it's possible and feasible. And our view is very much where we see good practices or good things that we see in one part of the world, we try to share that in other parts of the world. We operate in the public interest, so we're not a straightforward commercial product sale. So our perspective is a little different for that reason, and we come very much at the angle that the AI conversation cannot be just about technologists, because if you want to scale AI in any organization, you're going to need someone who's like a CFO or an FD or someone like that to get involved and to actually procure that technology into their organization and to have systems in place to be able to manage and risk manage the adoption of that technology. So that's where we are coming from in terms of widening the conversation, learning very much from the technologists, but also bringing a broader pool of people into this discussion. In relation to how we see use cases and how we see, so for us, we very much come at this from a very simple, practical point of view. So if you think about traditional solutions or discriminatory AI or the older versions, the sort of things that we see tends to be very, very useful is where there's an existing, somebody was talking about data sets, etc. When you think about consolidation of financial statements, for example, there are some fairly repetitive, fairly clear norms around how you do it across a large organization with subsidiaries in different parts of the world, etc., etc. And those are the sort of things where we think that systems can learn. And we very much come from the view that we see AI in the context of co-pilot rather than autopilot. So we would never be comfortable, I think, for any use case that we consider leaving it to do. I don't think anyone is, actually. But I think we come very much from the view that it can really help with managing complex financial processes, consolidation of statements, etc., or even at the more lower end of routine tasks, for example, in terms of understanding invoices and invoice coding. These are not very glamorous things, and somebody's got to do it. And the fact is that you might as well get the technology to do these things, and it's something which is a win-win. It allows the human to be further up the value chain and the value they add, and it allows the technology. And this wasn't possible before AI, because a lot of these invoices, you're basically looking at the input data isn't something you can put in rows and columns. It's a picture. It's a picture of a receipt or an invoice, and you need to be able to code that into some way which is reliable and works over time. So I think we see applications across that. We see applications across anomaly detection in areas like audit and assurance. But of course, those are I would say less mature compared to the other things I just talked about. And more recently with generative AI, we see some new types of opportunities coming through in terms of understanding, and there's a gentleman here who was talking about conversational, but understanding, for example, if you've got international financial reporting standards, you could ask it questions around, what is the answer for this particular situation, and it will try and give you a response. I come back to what I said about Copilot and Autopilot, which is that a finance professional would understand the context within which a particular standard and the business context within which it's being applied, which we don't feel that the AI is currently at the stage where we would feel comfortable just leaving it to give an answer. But what generative AI can do is it allows you a very, very user-friendly platform to be able to ask those questions and to get a response to say, in this kind of scenario, we think the standard would need to be applied in XYZ way. I think synthetic data sets are the other thing where we think there's potential, because for things like scenario planning and forecasting, you need quite credible and relatable data sets that, I mean, with COVID, most of our organizations didn't really have, and I think anywhere in the world, they didn't really have a proper mechanism to understand what that kind of, how to factor something like that into the forecasting model and into the solution. And eventually people figured it out. But I think, having really credible synthetic data sets to help you understand scenario planning and forecasting is something that we see as a great opportunity. And also things like custom dashboards. So again, this is not something very sexy, but it is something important, because if you want people in the organization to not keep going to IT to build me a dashboard and to be able to do it themselves, you have low-code and no-code platforms which are often run by AI, and which we find are increasingly a number of our users find a great amount of value from. So what we try to do, I guess, from a ACCA perspective within my team, we speak to governments, both, of course, in the West, in the UK and US, but in India and also in Africa, in China, in Singapore, Malaysia, Australia. And what we try to do is to figure out what we learn across these different environments and to share it where we can through our thought leadership, through our reports, through other kinds of engagements that we have. We also obviously offer training. So that's really where we're coming from at the discussion, because I suspect it's a slightly different angle to some of the other speakers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Narayan. I think one thing which really struck to me was, you spoke about helping the humans go further up the value chain. Right, and I think what I get a sense from your point, and I'll go to Dr. Shailesh Kumar, is just reducing the redundancy tasks, or tasks which, in your words, may not be very glamorous or may not be very sexy, and just sort of coming up with technologies which help in building those data sets also is very, very critical. I think just generally looking at finance and accounting, I think one of the things which we are also seeing is the ability of the forecasting models, and I think that's where the whole point of data sets keeps coming back, because I think it was earlier mentioned as well, and I would love to get some impetus maybe in the next round in terms of how do we get better, more informed data sets, because I think data sets is becoming an issue, or not an issue, but is definitely a factor which plays a big role with respect to how good your model is, right? So I think these are the questions which we need to answer in the next round as well. But I want to go to Dr. Shailesh Kumar. Dr. Kumar, you have a presentation, if I'm not wrong.
Hello? Yeah, okay, great. So how many of you have heard of the company called Chai Point? Anybody? Chai Point. So they have a tagline which I really liked. It said, India runs on chai. And from there, I realized we need a different tagline now, which is Bharat runs on AI. Okay? So that's what I want to talk about, which is how do we get from India runs on chai to Bharat runs on AI? And that's the journey. So, we saw a lot of beautiful use cases across domains. These are social sector, there are, commercial and business sectors. So I want to talk about AI from a top-down system thinking point of view instead of bottom-up use case thinking point of view. And I'll talk about three big ideas. One is, what is this complex ecosystem? If you think about all these ecosystems we are talking about, education, healthcare, agriculture, these are all complex ecosystems. These are not 200 individual models trying to work together. It's a very complex ecosystem, right? Then we'll talk about what is an operating system for such an ecosystem. We have an operating system for our mobile phones, for our TVs, for our washing machines, for our cloud. But what about an operating system for an ecosystem is the next big idea. And third, I'll talk about truly democratizing AI, what kind of a AI marketplace we can create, which is, so the second and third is what I'm proposing as the digital public infrastructure for the country, like UPI, in the AI world, right? What are these two infrastructures we are going to need, right? So let's talk about ecosystem. If you think about how products have evolved, right? They started with physical products with actual, programmed intelligence. Then came the second generation products, which were, crowdsourced intelligence. And now we are heading into third generation products. In the next 20 years, we are going to be talking about ecosystems as products, right? And, smart city is one product. Think like that, right? So we are going to need a next level of thinking, both in terms of IT thinking and AI thinking on how do we create such ecosystems. And that's when, we can say Bharat runs on AI, right? So, think of all these. These are not simple systems. Building one drone well, making it work is a great idea. But making an entire agriculture ecosystem work as a single unit, where all satellite data, IoT data, all the policies on agriculture, supply chain of seed and fertilizer has to work as a single whole. And if you look at the inefficiency in any system, is because of these silos and non-integrated way. Bottom-up way we have created systems and we are somehow running, right? So all these ecosystem, healthcare ecosystem, we talked about a lot of bottom-up use cases, but a hospital is a very nice ecosystem, but it's a single product. What about the entire healthcare ecosystem of a country as a whole? Today, I as a patient go to a lab or a pharmacy or a hospital or a doctor, they're not connected. So the national health stack is now a first step in that direction. So the first thing we want to do is bring ecosystem thinking into AI thinking and say, think about AI as a top-down beast and not, I won't go into the details, but let's talk about the second big idea, which is what does it mean to have an operating system for an ecosystem, right? So I won't go into the details, but if you think about it, every operating system works on a bunch of workflows, right? Like when you eat food, your digestive workflow starts, right? When we fall sick, our exception workflow starts. So we are a bunch of workflows. When somebody orders something on Amazon, a workflow starts. So there's a workflow thinking that we want to bring. And these are different types of workflows I want to go into. And then we have different systems that drive an AI system, an ecosystem, right? You have sensors, you have data, you have intelligence, you have operations, you have interfaces, and you have integration of all of this together. So these are two big themes in an ecosystem thinking, and these are some of the things we teach at Geo Institute also, how to become a top-down data scientist, because bottom-up data science is over now, right? ChatGPT can build all the models and deploy them. We need to now take a different role as humans, as parents, on what AI should do. So workflow thinking, if you think about retail as a sector, you can think about multiple workflows running retail, right? How do you get orders? How do you do demand forecasting that somebody talked about? How do you create a profile of a user, personalize everything? How do you make sure search allocation is happening and all of that, right? So these are workflows running a retail. This is 80% of our retail is in one slide. Yeah. What we are doing is through Reliance Foundation and Reliance and many other partners here is we are now thinking what is an agriculture ecosystem. Not here one model, here one model, this is one startup doing one thing, one startup doing thing. Unless we integrate all that, a farmer cannot have 200 apps on his phone doing one thing for one app, one thing for one app. We can't, that is not a sustainable model. So the way we think about an operating system is, think about all the events in a domain, right? Weather events, pest events, soil events in agriculture domain. Think of an operating system which will need 4 things. One is a very personalized information on every farm, right? What is the sodium, potassium, water content? It'll need all the models, agri models, omics models, ma'am talked about, for crops and soil models and all that, satellite models. It'll need a lot of domain knowledge. Agriculture has the largest domain knowledge. So how do we think about representing that domain knowledge? Which crop, which soil needs what fertilizer at what time? How do we represent that knowledge and use it in AI and reasoning? And finally, how do we create a content lake for every farmer to consume in different languages for different use cases? Now that will produce a bunch of advisories, right? Imagine every morning, every farmer gets an advisory, what you need to do based on weather forecasting, soil IoT, satellite data, mandi prices, everything, right? Imagine how government gets advisory, what to import, what to export, how to change prices of things, how do you do supply dashboard for the country. Every farm, I can tell now what is coming in the next 2 weeks. We have supply, we have demand from all the retail stores. Can we not do a much better, efficient system on that, right? So on and so forth, we can generate an agriculture operating system. We saw some use cases. Can we generate a healthcare operating system? Again, we have silos of data in multiple places. All these events are coming to health operating system of a country. And now imagine you have an electronic health record, which is one of the things that India is now making a lot of progress on. We have a lot of models on diagnosis, on MRI, on PT scan, and all of that. We have a lot of medical domain knowledge, which medicine, which drug, which gene, which protein, ma'am talked about. And then we have a lot of medical content, WebMD for India, if you will. And now we can generate advisories for every diagnosis and say, hey, your Fitbit is saying so and so, you need to get a checkup or whatever, right? So how do we go from preventive, or reactive healthcare, when I'm already sick, I go to a doctor, to a predictive or preventive healthcare is now possible because all my historical data is there. I can predict what you are going to have, and therefore you can intervene beforehand, right? Similarly, if you think about education operating system, again, I'm creating a design pattern here. All we need to do as a country, as a collection of people responsible for a sector, think about the kind of input events, think about the kind of output advisory to a student. What you should study should be different than what you should study because, Netflix is all personalized, but education is not. Somehow our priorities have been different in the last 20 years. And, Indian strategy paper is now twisting that and saying, no, don't worry about that. Focus on these primary sectors, right? How do we give a different homework to every child so that he starts low on whatever, he's not bored to death? Or how do we do different things? So there's a whole scope of a completely new way of thinking about these three ecosystems in the new world, the post-AI world. Yeah. Third, I'll talk about this marketplace. And I think, no single company can do all this, right? So look at the scope. You have all these sectors, right? For every sector, you have multiple beneficiaries. For each beneficiary, they use many, many applications. Each application uses many, many types of services. Each service, let's say AI services, there are many, many AI services within one. Who is going to build all this? That is the question, right? So, we need so many data scientists in the future. Today, everybody is doing LLM, but someday we'll all start doing our own things. So today, how do we connect companies, research organizations, education institutes who are producing a lot of good AI, but that is not getting in the hands of the end user? The farmer is not benefiting from speech-to-text model developed in Microsoft or Google, right? How do we connect the dots is what the next infrastructure I want to talk about. This is a concept video. Imagine that somebody in Kerala built a Machli app for fishermen, and he wants to give them advisory on where to go or not to go because of weather. Now this app, they realize they want to make it speech enabled because fishermen cannot read, and it needs to be in 10 Indian languages, right? So that's the AI consumer. He's a consumer of AI, and he's a producer of an application, of a Machli app. Now see what happens, volume please. Yeah? So whenever...
What's your phone number?
So whenever he is clicking on English language, the app speaks to you because there is a text-to-speech already part of the ecosystem. But whenever he clicked on the other language, right, Malayalam or Telugu.
Choose language.
So when he clicks on
what's your phone number?
English, it says what's your phone number. But when he clicks on some other language, there is no audio.
Language.
Now there is no audio, right? So he is a consumer of AI. He wants a text-to-speech model in 10 Indian languages. Now imagine somebody else in the country, somewhere. He has no idea that this app exists. He goes to a website and says, I'm an expert in text-to-speech model in Indian languages. My favorite language is so-and-so. I will only upload my model into this system. And with a few clicks, let's say somebody uploads a model. He has no idea that this guy exists, right? And now he's uploaded his Telugu text-to-speech model, IIT Hyderabad guy. And
Me phone number?
Now suddenly this app is speech enabled on the other side. That is the possibility that we want to talk.
Yeah.
So the idea is, like when I eat food here, I don't know or need to know who the farmer was who produced the potato and the tomato. Similarly, the person who produced AI and the I don't know my driver in taxi, right? This is Uberization. So marketplaces create such amazing ecosystem, and this is one of the most important ecosystem we need to create as a country. So I'll just leave you with that, and then we'll let the discussion go. But I think all these things are going to be needed. Digitization of a lot of data we talked about. Automation of everything that should be automated is important. Making everything intelligent is important, means continuously improving. Democratization we talked about. How do you bring producers and consumers of AI together? It will create a new economy, because now I don't need to work for a company. I can upload my model and the platform pays for it, because my model is so good, hundreds of applications are using it, right? And inclusion is very important. Speech inclusion we talked about earlier in languages. Personalization of everything, and how do we build trust is one of the areas that we'll discuss more. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you. Yeah, thank
you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. I think what I really picked up was the Bharat AI stack, sort of connecting all the dots together, connecting the developers from the end users to the creators, and also different industries and different stakeholders who will benefit from it. I would love to see how this progresses. Definitely very exciting. I think the use cases you spoke about, and just looking at the layer which you sort of discussed. Just one question, sir, if you may. I think when we are looking at AI and we're talking about technology, being developed all across the globe, for India to be a leader in this sector, what is it that we need to do in terms of just connecting all the dots? I think the ecosystem intelligence approach is really great, remarkable, because you're bringing in different aspects together, suppliers, demand, and then different stakeholders from accessing it, developers as well, and the large industries as well. But how can we build a system where we're able to export the technology globally? So,
yeah, so I think, hello. Yeah. So I think one is the talent, right? A lot of our talent is moving out, so we need to make sure we have a lot of AI talent in the country. Second is infrastructures like these will help people immediately monetize their models. Third is we need to standardize everything. Today my speech to text API call between Google, if I do, and Microsoft are not same. The parameters are different, the naming convention. If you look at 5G, 6G, how are they working across the world? Standardization. These are standards. So we need a standardization of AI for every service. Right. That's a very important thing for interoperability. And then availability of data. And see, AI is one of those catch-22 things. If you start using it, you will generate more data, then your AI will improve, then more people will use it, then you'll get more data. So we need to break that cycle of data we are all talking about. And unless we put out something, however, not perfect, we will not start breaking that cycle, right? So imagine if this platform is there, millions of farmers are now starting to take pictures and getting pesticide on their door through the ecosystem. We are generating data now, right? Yeah. Instead of simulating or augmenting data, we will have real data. And I keep telling that, India will benefit from AI a lot, but I think AI will benefit from India a lot more, given our use cases and diversity and volume of data. Even genomic data is so diverse here, you can, go and do a lot of analysis.
And I feel the demographic dividend plays to our advantage, because that helps us to generate a lot more data than, other countries could. But I love the point of standardization. I'd probably come back to you if we have time on standards, and would these be global standards which countries would have to adhere to. But Raghu, I want to come to you. Thank you so much for patiently listening to all the speakers. I understand, do you have a presentation which you want to sort of showcase very quickly, and then we can get involved? Yeah, you can maybe come over here on the podium. Yeah.
All right, I'll keep this short. I think all the speakers set this up well for me already. I'll just touch on who we are. ArtPark at IISc is a fairly unique non-profit organization. We work at the intersection of three ecosystems: governments and non-profits, research and academia, startups and industry. We leverage the best of these ecosystems for for impact. So Sailesh actually set this up pretty well, right? It's not just about the AI, it's about the system. The system's product view is often missing, right? The solutions we build needs to integrate well with that system to actually deliver impact. And the products you build might actually contain the AI that has to integrate well with the system. Usually, if you're talking about underserved communities and the kind of systems that actually serve them, what we see is this is not as simple as your Jio or an Amazon or a Flipkart, this thing. How many times have you had a recommender engine give you a book recommendation that when you tried to order, told you that it wasn't in stock? Probably doesn't happen, right? So that's just an example of the many gaps that have to be filled from policies and validations, right? To do validations of healthcare AI, you need high quality, highly annotated data sets. ABDM will do a wonderful job of creating certain structures, standardization, but it will not ensure completeness and accuracy. So we need systems such as that. Coming down to the product level, risks. So today, I'll just take a couple of examples of our real work on the ground currently going on. One, there's an AI One Health and Climate platform, probably largest of its kind in implementation, that's deployed across Maharashtra and Karnataka. We kind of asked the question, we did all wonderful things during COVID, right? We did wastewater surveillance, genomic surveillance, scenario planning, capacity analysis. How do we really embed that into the systems? Because whether you say One Health, whether you say pandemic prevention, whether you say disaster management, broadly the sort of tools and systems required are same. But how do you actually implement them? Because it's not plug and play products. So we created this thing called Data Science Innovation Hub with support from the PSA's office and the Rockefeller Foundation. And we built today, if you come to our booth, P9 between Google and Microsoft's booths, please check us out. You will see this in action, down to ward level, dengue predictions. Why dengue? It is a climate sensitive, infectious, endemic disease that the systems have to deal with every day. And hence, you are able to build muscle by building this system. Right. So in the way we do that is we work with many stakeholders, many data types, and many researchers and innovators. And these are just some of the institutions collaborating with us, right? And this is live, being used down to the ASHA level workers in these geographies. And this is possible because we take a very holistic approach to not just look at the AI, but many other things that need to happen. This was work done in roughly 8 months' time, right? Another example with Arman, it's an amazing nonprofit organization, manages mHealth programs for the country. In the LLM storm, we asked, how do we really bring that power to the frontline health workers? Right? Again, a couple of things I'll call out. It's not about the LLM, it's about the use case. Often we jump to decision support. There are many risks there due to which we said that's not what we are going to start with. We're going to start with lower risk, but still high impact use cases. We don't have the time to go into nuances here, but some things, for example, just the language itself, right? You see here typos in Telugu written in English, typos in Telugu, typos in English, and typos in English written in Telugu, right? And audio and text queries are separate, messages are split. So you have to think deeply. So there are 1,000 things outside of AI that actually impacts what AI you build and what use cases you're actually going to launch, right? So I thought I'll just bring out some of these elements. And of course, we are borrowing from the DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure playbook, as we build these assets and work with the ecosystem. With that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Raghu. Maybe a question for you as well before we sort of go to David. Just sort of talking about population level interventions, Raghu. So just want to get your perspective on the integration of AI in healthcare and climate ecosystem to sort of bring in population level interventions. So over to you on that.
Sure. Are you able to hear me? Yeah. A lot of it is bringing data from many sources together.
Just a second. I think the audio is...
Yeah. A lot of it is bringing data from many sources together. Yeah. That requires working across many stakeholders to create a shared understanding. So what we have learned from our work is, 50% of the work is in actually creating shared understanding, right? 40% of the work is understanding all the workflows, right? 10% is in tech, and out of the 10%, maybe 30%, is where the real AI stuff comes in, and out of the 30%, 90% is data, right? So AI is the last little bit that really comes down to it. So that, to me, so if you say climate, health, etc., we have data coming from IMD, we have data coming in from India Institute of
And these are accurate data sets, right? I mean,
this is live data. So what we saw, dengue outbreak prediction that's there, that's because so many institutions are giving us live data, right? And so many institutions are consuming at the other end, and so many institutions are actually using that platform. It's just not my computational epidemiologists, top computational epidemiologists across the country who after COVID went back to their research silos, are now collaborating to actually serve multiple stakeholders.
Right.
I think this is the model we'll have to think of.
I think one key emerging theme from this discussion is around the availability of data sets and the availability of accurate data sets which can help us scale the model. So we'll come back to Akrit, Dr. Kumar, Leila, all of you to just focus a little bit more on that, and also a little bit on ethical parts, because I think we have half an hour to go. We will open the floor to the audience. We'll give you all around 15 minutes. So we have around 15 more minutes. David, you're the only one who hasn't spoken anything and been very patiently listening. I think you've been listening for the last 1.5 hours. So there's a lot of data you have collected by listening to all of us. So have I. But I want to move the discussion a little bit towards policy and regulation. And I want to sort of kickstart that with you, with the role of governments, right? I mean, we haven't spoken about governments. And I think, when we're looking at regulation, I don't want to sort of emphasize on that, but we've seen the EU coming up with the the AI Act. The US recently passed the executive order on safe and secure trustworthy AI. We've seen the UK deliver its safety summit recently. They don't want to come up with any regulation yet. They want the industry to grow. So different governments are looking at it differently in terms of regulating it. But to you, what I want to understand is what is the role of governments in general to help in the penetration of AI in some of these key sectors, and what can be done more to harness that? So over to you.
Great. Thanks, Kazem, and great to be here with you all. I was a little late at the beginning. Google Maps is excellent, but we need deeper integration with this conference, at least for me. But it's great to be here. Look, one of the beauties of being last and the downsides of being last is most things have been said. And I couldn't agree more with almost everything that I heard. One interesting point often in these conversations is what metaphors people use. And we've heard a couple today, that AI is a child, AI is a tutor, AI is an intern, is the other, and AI is a tool. And I like to think of AI really as an engine. I think that's one of the best analogies, and the internal combustion engine. And I think what often gets lost in the policy conversations is that AI in a way is agnostic, right? It is a multiplier across so many different areas and fields, in the social sector and the economic sector and so on and so forth. And that's often lost. And I think what's wonderful about this panel, and I'll transition to the government role in a second, is most of the conversation globally now around AI has been along two vectors, right? One is the focus on risk. And there are certainly important risks to be dealt with in AI, and it's good that we're dealing and having robust conversations about those. And then the second is sort of abstract discussions about the usefulness of the technology and how it's going to solve different issues. I think what we've heard across this this morning is really what's important about AI is how AI is going to change people's lives and solve people's problems in very specific ways. And I think it brings out another element to this kind of risk conversation that we're seeing globally, that a really important risk that we all need to grapple with is the risk of not developing and deploying these technologies. And so I think that's something that I know GPay is very focused on in sort of the global south part of the conversation. You know, when I think about government enablement, I think about really three pieces, right? One is sort of the infrastructure and innovation that needs to be enabled. The second is ensuring that our workers and workforces all can benefit. And the third is ensuring inclusivity, and that these technologies actually can be and are deployed, right? So the first, with respect to with respect to infrastructure and innovation, again, a lot of the regulatory discussion has been about sort of societal harms as well as existential risks. But we also need to make sure that that core underlying innovation driver is there, right? What does that mean? It means ensuring access to data. There's been a lot of talk about data, and government policy across various different areas will mean whether data is available or not, right? We talked about the power of language, right? How is, you know, how are models right now? Google Translate, I think, supports something like 19 different Indian languages. We're aiming for 100 plus. One of the issues was the discussion of data sets. So we are actually partnering with IIS on a project across all 700 plus districts in India to help sort of collect open source audio sets of different Indic languages so that we and others can train on them, and we're making that available. So government has an important role to that. If government sort of keeps data sets closed, if others in private sector keep data sets closed, we can't all learn from it. Privacy policies. In some parts of the world, you see privacy policies that aren't actually focused on harm, but say any personal information that happens to be out on the web, one can't learn from, even if it's out there publicly. Well, what does that mean when you're trying to learn and train models, right? So those are two examples. Another is compute resources, right? And ensuring that researchers, small businesses, others have access to compute resources and working in a public-private partnership for that. The second, and finally, just with respect to data access, and it's hard to remember because it's been a long morning, but our very first speaker talked about the incredible promise of AI in medicine, and talked about AlphaFold, which was this amazing development by Google DeepMind research project over several years. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, which focused on the exact problem that Madam Rai was talking about, which is the folding of proteins, right? And you can look at an amino acid sequence, but it can be infinite number of folds. And up to now, it would take a PhD, something like their dissertation, to figure out the fold of one protein. Through advanced data sets and advanced AI models, right, Google DeepMind was able to correctly map and predict the structure of pretty much all proteins, 200 million proteins. And these are being used by more than 1 million biologists around the world to help develop cancer treatments, malaria vaccines, many other amazing scientific breakthroughs. Why was DeepMind able to do that? One reason was when the human genome was sequenced. We had other sequencing projects. Those data sets were made publicly available, so people could learn from them. Imagine if they weren't, right? So policy is super important there. Second broad category is worker training, right? And this plays differently in different parts of the world, but certainly making sure that workers are able to take advantage of of AI, making sure that students have the right training. And I will acknowledge something up front. We have a lot of unknowns here. I don't think anyone has a very good idea 10 years from now what exactly are going to be the right skills in the workforce given the way that AI is going to augment. We have some idea, so we need to understand that more, and we need to work on training issues. And then the third is inclusivity. And ensuring deployment. So we've heard a number of examples across regulated sectors, right? Financial services, financial inclusion, healthcare. Each of these sectors have regulators, right?
Yeah.
And we see across different countries very different sort of willingness by regulators to accept AI-powered devices,
Right.
And often held to non-human standards, right? The human system operates to 60% accuracy. The AI system operates to 70% efficiency, but the regulator doesn't like that it's a machine, so doesn't approve it, right? So we need to have kind of an innovation deployment first approach to approvals. And then finally, I'll just say on the inclusivity piece, small and medium-sized businesses, right? And I think the agriculture example is a terrific one, but there are other small businesses who need some basic tools, digital literacy in order to be able to deploy AI in their sectors. And that's just not going to happen by accident. Governments have a key role. Companies like Google have a key role to play as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. I think few important points coming in. I have around 20 minutes, so I want to spend only 5 more minutes on discussing 3 aspects. One is data sets. And I think this has been a recurring theme. And I just want to sort of come in the need for open source data sets, right? I mean, what is it that the governments can do? What do we need at maybe at the local level in India, but even at the multilateral level globally? Because we've seen that the UN has constituted a high-level working group on AI recently. So there is a lot of discussion happening on the multilateral forums as well. So would love to get a couple of points if we may. I don't know who we could call, but maybe Raghu, you want to just come in very quickly, and those who want to come in, feel free to just add
just
to
about open
points.
source, because we do work in this space.
Yeah.
We are working with Métis Bhashani division to create some of the largest open source data sets for Indic languages.
Right.
In Hindi, we have a saying, right? Kos pe badle pani, char kos pe bani, which basically means language changes, you know, every 4 corners anyway, every 4 turns. So we are collecting such diverse spoken language data that is also getting transcribed. Another example is working with ICMR, because they are the nodal organization for research, clinical study standard data, which is what you need to build individual level generalizable AI, right? That is another DPI, digital public infrastructure, that we are building, right? So we are sharing this, and also generally call for everyone to collaborate and make it happen.
What do we need on the policy level to achieve this within India? I mean, is there something which we need to do on the policy level? Would love to get maybe a couple of interventions. Samir or maybe Akrit?
I think there needs to be, and we've had some experience in working with policymakers. There needs to be real incentives to, to share with guardrails, obviously, but real incentives and real policies and frameworks, not just nudges, but real solid policies and mechanisms to share data sets for collaboration in the context of guardrails, right? So, sort of just a completely sort of free sharing is going to create risks, which we all are aware of, but thinking through the guardrails, but at the same time, a very systematic policy first approach to sharing and creating public data as a public good is super important. And even today, despite sort of the narrative and the thinking, we still see a lot of reluctance, even in the public sector, to share data, which, I'm sure with time, all those barriers will get broken, but that really needs a lot more proactive approach to breaking those barriers.
There's a conservativeness when it comes to.
I mean, data is seen as power,
Right.
so there's a natural tendency to
Right.
withhold data.
Right.
And if we have to go Bharat powered by AI, we
Yeah.
need exactly the reverse mindset of that.
I want to come to Dr. Kumar very quickly, Dr. Kumar, on this point. And another aspect which we wanted to also bring in was, I think what David also spoke about was computing power, computing resources, right? Where are we on this? How fast are we moving ahead with respect to getting the most advanced computing system? Because what you really need is the ability of high-level computing to be able to process tons and tons of data to produce those models. So.
Yeah, I think everybody from top to bottom recognizes that we missed the boat on compute infrastructure. While we are going very fast on physical infrastructure, I think compute infrastructure, we are way behind. And
Right.
that's why, you saw announcement by Reliance, Mr. Ambani and
Yeah.
Tata's going to procure a lot of hardware for India
Right.
and make it available, right? What we did for data is an overloaded term now. In the telecom world, right, to bring cost of connectivity down, created a whole new set of economic benefit. Now we have to bring the cost of compute down, which will create a lot of benefit. And large companies, Adani's, Reliance, Tata's, we have data centers.
Right.
What we need is hardware. We also have very good cooling systems because that's a bigger cost in, I think data cost becomes, compute cost becomes energy cost at some point.
Yep.
So energy, with solar and all of that, energy costs will come down. Those benefits will get in the hands of the citizens at some point. So I think bringing cost of, infrastructure down is the next big fundamental thing that the country needs to
And
do.
that'll happen with
Everything
scale.
else we are ready with.
And that will happen naturally as things scale up.
Yeah.
The cost would go down. I think we saw that with mobile phones. So hopefully, we can replicate that when it comes to.
It's a supply problem right now, right? Everybody wants the greatest and latest. So, quantum is still 5 years ahead. So how do we make the most of the GPUs in the next 5 years till quantum comes? So I think we are slightly behind on that, thanks to ChatGPT, which suddenly raised the bar on how much data and compute you need for every little query. Yeah.
Right. David, you wanted to?
Yeah, I just want to make one point. I agree with that. I think things are going to change really fast, right? And even you look at models. Just last week, Google released Gemini, right, and announced Gemini in three different sort of sizes, right? In Gemini Nano, which is our smallest model, which runs on device. And has a lot of the same capabilities. So we're already seeing much, much smaller models that are very powerful. And I think that's going to change in an exponential way. And at the same time that we continue to increase the power of TPUs and AI optimized chips.
Okay, I want to open the floor now because I know a lot of you all have been waiting with a lot of patience for the last few minutes and couple of hours. So we will have around a few set of questions all across the table, and some of our speakers will be happy to take it up. So please raise your hands and we'll come to you. I think gentleman over here and gentleman over there as well. Just introduce yourself, if you may, when you ask the question. Thank you. And maybe you can give him a mic as well.
Hello, my name is Brian Byrne. I'm with USAID. I know that we work with some of your organizations on some of these issues. Can you tell me a little bit about what you anticipate as a realistic set of business models for the development and internationalization of some of the technologies that you're talking about? What policy changes should we anticipate? Thank you.
Okay, who wants to take it up? Leila, you want to take it up? Akrit?
I actually didn't hear.
Okay. Maybe the next question.
Maybe I'm
Akrit
happy to
can
answer that. I think the question is, as you think about these models, what are the realistic business models that will emerge out of these technologies? I think, if you look at some of the existing companies who've been building foundational models, whether it's OpenAI or whether it is Google or Microsoft, I think fundamentally they're going to follow a similar model than that typical infrastructure companies have, which is along the lines of compute, where basically you pay per consumption to some degree. It's basically, at least we define it as API hits or API calls, right? So the amount you consume, amount of times your calling the model for various different purposes, you're basically paying as you go. So we think it'll follow similar to what a typical technology infrastructure business looks like. I think the second part of your question was whether the policy will influence the business model. I would like to think no. I don't think policy will influence the way these companies potentially charge. I think they will let the free market dictate the pricing. However, of course, where policy will play a very active role is in ensuring security, safety, and responsible AI. So I think they'll ensure that there is enough guardrails and regulations for these companies to do that, but likely they'll let the business models decided by whatever the market wants to pay.
Okay, yeah, gentleman over there, please.
Yeah, so my name is Anandan. This question it could be for Sailesh or Akrit or Raghu or Samir, mostly for the ones who are thinking about things in India. A lot of the development in the commercial sector, in computer science, and now in AI, in India have been developed on global platforms that were developed by companies like Google and Microsoft and AWS, be it hardware or software, operating systems, cloud. Going forward, I'm sure that will continue, and I think that's not a bad thing. However, there's a sense intuitively there is something that's not getting covered, which would have to be much more of an Indian native effort. I'm just wondering, in your thinking, what is that? That's something that India needs to invest in, either as a national effort or as a more private sector effort. I mean, it's a very broad question, but what is something that India has to do in order to achieve its goals for leveraging these technologies?
So I'll probably answer it partly. So, the compute layer is a very important layer. We have never been a compute hub of the world. We've been importing technology on compute side. So I think that is one area that the government has already started putting a lot of resources. We want to be a large manufacturing of chips, and fabs are coming, and then slowly the next layer compute will come. And Make in India and all those initiatives are going to make sure that Make in India, not only aircrafts, but also chips for aircrafts, right, should happen here. So I think that is one area that we are going to do a lot of work. Upskilling, we are doing a lot of work. I mean, there are a lot of institutes opening up, a lot of programs are running. So on the talent side and on the compute side, these are the two big areas where I think if we do, the rest of it is common, right? Whether you build a face model in one data set or the other, it doesn't matter. But these two areas, I think we need to brush up. And then discovery of use cases and production and consumption of AI, and bringing those two people together, the marketplace kind of infrastructure will really help accelerate the economy in those senses.
I feel really tempted to answer this question because actually I think about that a lot, like literally every day. And the part I think about is not what we need. The part I think about is a little bit earlier in your question, which is what is that missing piece? So one of the things as we think about these problems and building models, I often just sometimes wake up and think that, we use all the models that are out there right now, which are none of them are built in India. We use GPT-4, 3, Falcon, Llama, Bard, Gemini now, right? And they're doing a fairly good job. So the part I think about a little bit is, and I don't have that answer from even myself, is that, is there something really missing? Maybe the language models or rather the data sets for the 13, 14 language are, but is that again something we will build? Because exactly what you mentioned, right? Historically, there's precedent has not been there. Whether it has been compute or infrastructure or any core technology, we've been good importers and we've done a great job at building very good applications on top. So a debate that I would love to have at some point, and we have this at Haptic and even Geo very often, is that should we instead really focus on building great applications and be really headstrong and do a great job in healthcare financial services? Or is there something missing for which we will need to also build models? And that's something I don't have the answer to.
I just want to add
one
thing, because I'll take an example from medicine, right?
Yeah.
X-rays for TB have been around for a while, but they are not still widely deployed. There have been large studies done, but still not widely deployed, right? So I think for us to use, and one of the big reasons for that is we do not have good validation mechanisms. AI models are such that you cannot validate it in one place or one point of time and use it forever, right?
Yeah.
So India needs to build its own. So if you take X-rays that are mostly somewhere else, for example, women in India wear necklaces with safety pins on them, right? So if you're, and all your models that do not have Indian data are going to fail on it. And in fact, if Indian data is constructed so that it's meant to be, what do you say, this lab clean, it's going to fail on the field. I'm just giving you one analogy of the sort of challenges that India has to solve for itself and the world will not solve, right? Oral cancer, no other country is going to solve it, right? The sort of mixed language typos that I talked about, no other country is going to solve, right? So there's a bunch of stuff like this we have to do ourselves.
I'm afraid we are running really behind time, so maybe one or two more questions. Two more questions, that's all we can do. The lady over there and the gentleman over here. Yeah, we can go to the lady over there.
Thank you so much. My name is Jamila. I'm from The Dialogue. Thank you to all the panelists for all the insightful comments that you made on the topic. My question sort of is open to the entire panel. And it basically, I would want to know from the panel that when we talk about from the regulation or the policy perspective, I'd want to know from the panelists, as David mentioned, that AI is agnostic, right? But when we do talk about the integration of AI in priority sectors, from a regulation perspective, say the challenges in healthcare might not be similar to the challenges in finance. So do you feel that there is need for certain sectoral guidelines for better integration of AI? And of course, I can also sort of go on the challenges that different sectors face, but I guess the panel is pretty aware of all of them. So I'd want to open this question to the entire panel. Is there need for better sectoral guidelines in the application of AI in key priority sectors?
Narayan, you want to take that up? Maybe Laila, would love to get your perspective as well after Narayan. Yeah.
I'll make it really brief. I think the one thing I'd say is that
half a minute, sorry.
Yeah. I think clearly there's a expertise asymmetry in terms of policymakers versus those who are in the industry. So one of the things which has worked in some parts of the world is like a regulatory sandbox, for example, where there's an opportunity to test things and to understand, and this may link to the earlier question about business models as well. It's not for, it's for the market to decide the business model, but it is for the regulatory and policy environment to give an enabling environment for that to happen. And things like sandboxes may be one mechanism. I think it's a fair point. If you look in the UK, what they've released in the white paper is to leave a lot of the AI regulation to sector regulators. And I think over the next 6 months, we're going to find out whether that approach is tenable and whether it can actually work, or whether you need a horizontal AI regulator setting some common rules across the sector as well, as the EU has moved in that direction. So I think it's an open question. But I think the underlying point I'd make is upskilling through greater visibility of what these people are doing in the entrepreneurial sector is important for regulators.
Yeah. Laila, half a minute.
The biggest problem is that data is money. So you've got to be at a stage where you can regularize and put in rules about how you're going to use the AI and what you're going to teach it. And then once you've got data, what are you going to do and who's got access to that data? Does that data invade anybody else's privacy? And that's a big issue. It's a big issue in the UK right now because one company, an American company, is now going to basically build the UK platform for medical, for the NHS records. There is uproar about it, because once you start giving control to one company, it's a big issue. And there's no reason, really, why we can't get platforms to talk to one another and communicate information, and why we can't create data without having someone's identity. The other thing, just going back to medical data, is that when you're looking at health, the data, for example, that I might get from patients in Africa could be completely different to what I'm getting in the UK. So the data analysis itself is very important because the bodies are built differently. So again, that's another issue that we have to look at regulating.
Thank you so much, Laila. And I'm afraid I'll have to end the panel here, but thank you so much to all the speakers. Over to Ananta.
Thank you to all our esteemed panelists and our moderator for your enlightening perspectives and a thought-provoking discussion. Your expertise and insights have greatly enriched today's session. I would now like to call upon Dr. Shukdeep Singh from the Confederation of Indian Industry to deliver the closing remarks.
Very good morning, dignitaries on stage. It was really a pleasure to hear you during this session on applications of AI in priority sectors at the Global Partnership of Artificial Intelligence. It is needless to say, ladies and gentlemen, that AI is generating a significant amount of buzz and engagement around the world, and we saw that in one of the first sessions of GPAI today morning. A special thanks to Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, and the GPAI team for organizing such a beautiful panel on AI and giving CII an opportunity to support this session. While the technologies, solutions, and models on AI are getting invented around the world in the labs and the companies and the research institutions, it is of utmost importance that the application finds its way across the deeper sections of all industries. The success that India will achieve in utilizing AI will significantly depend upon the application it is able to bring to its deeper sectors of the industry. With that, I extend my vote of thanks to all the speakers, panelists, moderator, delegates, and attendees. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining in, and I wish you all a good day ahead. Thank you.
In recognition of the significant contributions of our esteemed speakers, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Vinay Thakur, Managing Director, NIXI, Ministry of Electronics and IT, to the stage. Please welcome in felicitating our speakers.
Should I go on giving?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kazim Rizvi, founder, The Dialogue. Mr. David Weller, Senior Director, Emerging Technologies, Competitiveness and Sustainable Policy, Google. Mr. Narayanan Vaidyanathan, Head, Policy Development, Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. Dr. Shailesh Kumar, Chief Data Scientist, Center of Excellence in AI and ML, Geo Institute. Ms. Leila Cremona, Founder and CEO, Medibay. Mr. Akrit Vesh, CEO, Haptic AI. Mr. Raghu Dharmaraju, CEO, Art Park at IISc. Mr. Sameer Shah, Executive and Vice Chair, Dwara Holdings. Thank you, sir. Dr. Vinay Thakur, could you please stay back? Could you also felicitate Mr. Shukdeep Singh from CII? Thank you, sir. As we conclude this session, I extend my deepest thanks to our keynote speakers, panelists, and participants for making this event a success. Your insights and engagement are invaluable in advancing our understanding of AI's role in diverse sectors. Thank you to each one of you. Thank you.